Hi, my name is Will Nunziata, and I'm a New York City-based director and creator of theater, television, and film, and I'm also a proud FENIX Global Artist Ambassador. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to be speaking with the one and only CATHY RIGBY. She's a world champion and Olympian in gymnastics, a Broadway superstar, a sports commentator, a wife, a mother, a grandmother, an educator, and a fierce advocate for the arts. Before my interview with CATHY, here is a sneak peek at two roles she's played. One, Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, and then, of course, her iconic portrayal of Peter Pan.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. I'm flying. It's me, way up high, suddenly, here am I, I'm flying. I'm flying. I can soar, I can weave, and what's more, I'm not even trying. High up and as light as I can be. As he can be. I must be a sight lovely to see. Oh, yes, Rita, you are. I'm flying. Flying. Nothing will stop me now. Higher still, look at how I can zoom around. Woo. Way up off the ground, I'm flying. He's flying.
Well, this is an interview that I have been awaiting for, I guess, my whole life.
Cool.
CATHY RIGBY, 2 Olympics, a Broadway career, 18 years as a sports commentator, a public speaker, an advocate for the arts, 4 kids, 6 grandkids, over 37 years of marriage. You are a national treasure, CATHY RIGBY, and I am so thrilled to be speaking with you today.
Oh gosh, thank you. I'm humbled and a little bit embarrassed because I feel like my whole life I've got to do what I love, whatever field it is, and you know I've never had to feel, and I've never felt I really have to work. I get to do what my passion. I get, whether it was gymnastics or broadcasting or whatever. You know, and if you would have told me in high school or junior high that I would be ever standing on a stage, I would say you are out of your mind, because I used to cry when I gave oral book reports in school, let alone stand up on a stage. So, you know, the stage came at the perfect time because I just completed 2 Olympics, and I was really at the point of, I can't do this anymore. It's too much. It's too much competition. It's too much training 6 to 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, and every morning waking up going, okay, I got to practice this, and I got to do that, I got to do this, and I got to be perfect. And while it was a great training program, I really needed something else, and I was offered a bunch of commercials and some episodic television, and I went, okay, I don't know how to do it, but why not? Why not try? They were paying me to do it, so. Anyway, somebody, whether it was because of my talent at the time or whatever, said, hey, CATHY, if you want to do this for a living, why don't you take voice lessons and acting classes? I said, okay. I really didn't. I wanted to kind of really shut down a little bit after all of that. And it was a blessing. It saved my life that somebody gave me that advice, because all of a sudden I had to learn to connect with people. I learned to have I was much more aware of my own opinion and the opinions of others, and stepping into shoes of someone else's life. It wasn't just about me and an inanimate object like a balance beam, or it was about me going, okay, how do I think and feel, and how do they think and feel? And I have to train a voice that is I have to train these muscles that are involuntary. I can't force it to happen. I have to be patient and wait and figure it out. And it was just, you know, it really saved my emotional life. It was
Well,
the
CATHY,
very first show. Yeah.
I want to dive into that, because the audience just got a little sneak peek of you as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, and that was a launching pad for you in terms of that next chapter in your life. But before even doing that, I want to go back to the Olympics and also your career as a gymnast, which obviously not only trained you for, I think, the athleticism that it takes to be a performer, and now as an educator and a producer, but also the discipline and the will and belief in yourself to do the thing. I'm curious to know for you, when did you realize that gymnastics was something that you were going to pursue, on a professional level?
Yeah, I didn't really, I was a kid that was always jumping off things and standing on my head and playing on the monkey bars. I was pretty hyper, probably a little bit ADD, but I was just really athletic and competitive. Um, and I think sometimes when you grow up in an environment that my mother was an amazing lady. She was, I never knew she was a gymnast till many years after I started because she had polio, so she was paralyzed from the chest, from the waist down, but she still was able to kind of walk around with crutches and eventually was in a wheelchair. And unfortunately, my dad was a brilliant man, but he was an alcoholic. So I was the middle of five kids. My mom was a great example of the greatest generation of women that just knew what had to be done and did it. Despite her physical challenges, she worked and raised five kids without practically any help from my dad. And so she was my example. She didn't complain. She never had, she didn't cry about the fact that her legs didn't work and she was in pain most of the time. So she was my mentor, my example of, you just do it. You don't, if you're working hard. Anyway, I found out about this trampoline near my home, and and then I found a guy who told me about a club that I could join. And I met my coach, his name is Bud Marquette, said, "Oh," he called me Peanut. Peanut, why don't you join our team? And that's when I started going to the gym. I wanted to eat, sleep, drink gymnastics in any way I can. It wasn't about that I thought I would do or go, or there were no expectations, just the fact that I got to pursue something that I was really passionate about, and it was part of my DNA. Um, and I started training at the age of 10, and then I got right before the '68 Olympics. Somebody said, I didn't know what the Olympics were. There wasn't the same kind of coverage.
Right.
I mean, there was an Olympics prior to that, but it wasn't televised like it was in '68 and then '72 and on. And I thought, oh, what are the Olympics? Well, they said you have to be in the top 20 to compete at the Olympic trials in regional meets. And then you have to make the top six to be on the team. And I said, okay. So I went to the Olympic trials and I placed fifth. And the next thing I knew, I was on my way to Olympic training camp. And all these people that I looked up to were there at training camp, and we worked about 8 hours a day. And my first Olympics at 15, it was like, what is this? And, okay, there's a big crowd out here. And I happened to place the highest for the Americans, which at that time, if you knew gymnastics, it was like, it was like somebody trying to break into the sport that was completely dominated by the Eastern European countries. And it's a subjective sport. So you were not going to be given a high place unless your perceived value, unless you were at the time Russian or from Czechoslovakia or East Germany or Japan. They all had the powerhouse teams. So the fact that I could make it into the top 16 and was a big deal at the time. And I happened to have pigtails and, the whole thing of image. And all I was doing is what I loved. And from that point on, things changed, and suddenly you're the one to be the expected one, the one that's going to carry the sport to the next level. So we did really well in the '72 Olympics, and we, before that, I was able to win a medal, the first medal by an American at the World Championships, and then we went to '72 Olympics, and we placed fourth as a team, which was, it was the last time we had placed much, much lower. So we were really happy. We were trying to build in the sport. But then after I retired from the sport, I really wanted to get away from it. And yes, I got injured prior to the trials, but it didn't affect the Olympics. But afterwards, I knew immediately that I wanted to move on, and I wanted to get married. I wanted to have children. And I happened to fall into the world of theater by doing an arena. I don't know if you're probably not old enough to remember the Disney on Parade sort of shows done in huge arenas, like a basketball arena or what. And all the props, the costumes, everything was done in such a way that they were huge. And so somebody said, NBC Entertainment said, let's do Peter Pan. But I didn't have to use my voice, either singing or acting. I just had to be able to move and fly and do all that. And it was all pre-recorded, so all I had to do was mouth the words. And that's when somebody said, okay, Kathy, why don't you take some voice lessons? And because it was a year on the road, I learned a lot about movement and theater and audiences. And I just started studying and never thinking, I didn't know it would go anywhere. To tell you how I sounded in the beginning, I had a little boy who was at that point, as I started taking voice lessons about the third year in, I had a child, my oldest son, Buck. And I'm singing and doing vocalizing in the car, and I turn to him, and he's like this. I said, thanks, buddy. Thanks. But after 4 more years of training, my voice teachers kicked me out from behind the piano and said, it's time to audition. So I did, and then most horrifying, besides the Olympics, probably the most terrifying moment, because everybody knew Kathy Rigby as a gymnast, not as a performer. And so it was kind of a double-edged sword. You got in the door, but then it was like, okay, show me.
Yeah, right. Prove it. Right. Who does she think she is? Right.
Exactly.
Kathy, this sense of wonderment, you're talking about being a gymnast, no preconceived notion, no like, oh, I'm going to be a gold medalist, or even as a performer, oh, I have to be the best singer and win a Tony. Like, you just did the thing that felt right at the moment, and you were living your bliss. And I think it's this sense of play, Kathy, that you've always had, that you were born with in your bone marrow, whether as a gymnast or as a performer, and obviously now as an educator, and even in your advocacy work. This sense of play, and just through the showing and not telling, the idea of the power of imagination, dreaming big, and being unapologetically yourself. I know I spoke with you off camera about this, but I think it's true. I think in any stage you've ever stepped onto, whether as a teenager, a young adult, and an adult, in whatever hat you were wearing, as a gymnast, a performer, a speaker, an educator, you just showing up with that it factor that you were born with is permission for young kids like me, like when I saw you at 7 years old at the L'Enfant. I will never forget my parents whispering to me going, oh, that's America's sweetheart. She's a world-renowned gymnast. And I didn't know it was Peter Pan. It was Peter Pan who said, think lovely thoughts and up you'll go. And I think you've been doing that your whole life. So anyway, that's my soapbox.
I think ignorance is bliss a little bit. People said as far as the Olympics that, when you're young, you must be so, afraid, but you're not, because you don't know what the expectations are yet. It's when you get older and you start to find that. I think the best thing I've learned from gymnastics is that you have to work harder than anybody else to get the same score sometimes.
That's right.
You have to do that. And to be on stage, there are a lot of talented people, a heck of a lot more talented. You'll find somebody who's better, but this is what I know just in teaching, that if you start with the end result of where you want to go, it can really weigh you down. If there's a book called Talent is Overrated. Jeff Covey, I think is his name. And he talks about, it isn't just, yes, it's great to be born with a talent, but it's attention to the detail and the training in that. And I see this all the time. I don't know what your potential is. I don't know what my potential is. I do know that if I work really, really hard, for example, if I can't do the splits, you know what, it may be so hard for me, but incrementally, if I work it, if I do everything I can to make that happen the way it's supposed to happen, I'm going to get better than I was yesterday. if I would have told you I never could have sung. If I started with I can't sing, and I hear that a lot from kids, I can't do that. And I want to say, how dare you think that you can when there are people who struggle and work and build something. You can't just do everything necessarily, but you can work and get a lot better. And I teach, like right now I'm teaching in Miami, and I have these kids. And when I first came a week ago, they're all going, I can't do it. I can't do it. I said, well, tell me the steps that you're taking to get there. And they just kind of throw an element or do an element, or and they can't do it because they're not taking the right steps to get to that point. And I know in the book, talent is overrated. They talk about Mozart. They talk about his father being a conductor, and taking him from a very young age and giving him the specifics that it takes one by one, the syllabus to move on. And then if you have the talent on top of it, God bless you, that's great. I think it's more the patience and willingness to not skip to the end necessarily, but to really be aware of what it is you have to do to get to the next place.
Absolutely.
Don't assume that, and sometimes you aren't in the best position. Sometimes you don't have the money. So how can you figure out how to make it happen for yourself? What do you have to do? And that's getting harder for kids to know because they just pick up their phone and they can look it up.
Well,
There's-
right, and they go to, they see American Idol and they see America's
do
Got
that.
Talent. They see these shows. Oh, you can become famous overnight, but kids are forgetting about the craft. And if there's anyone, Kathy, that knows what it's like to literally live in the trenches, be in the trenches,
Yeah.
and do the journey and do the thing, it's you. Because look at, after your success, obviously, through this iconic role that obviously was created by the late, great Mary Martin, you not only made it your own, Kathy, but you became a light and a beacon of light and a North Star, dare I say, to many kids who were not around during Mary Martin. And you're looking at one of them, Kathy.
Oh.
But on top of that, you not only continue to give your talent away, you then, informing McCoy Rigby Entertainment at La Mirada, have given over 25 seasons worth of productions and opportunities to kids of all ages to do the thing. And then obviously from there, the creation of McCoy Rigby Conservatory of Music. If you don't mind going into those two ventures with your husband, and what the kind of initial germination of that idea and how that all came about for you.
My husband and I met doing my very first show, and Tom McCoy, we're both alike in some ways. I think like the maybe the old timers or whatever that work in theater, if somebody says, can you do this? They go, yep, I can do that. If I can't, I'm going to learn real quick how to get to do it. Tom was an incredible singer, performer, did lots of theater his whole life. And then we got married. We suddenly had 2 kids with one on the way. God bless him. We're almost 39 years married. But all of a sudden, this 25-year-old, very handsome, very successful theater performer had 3 children. And all of a sudden it was like, oh crap, now what are we going to do? And so he said, you know what, I think I'm going to go into trying to produce shows. And the very first show he got, because he was he's one of 11 kids in a very Irish Catholic family and went to Catholic school. And one of the priests at his school that he used to go to said, hey, Tom, do you know anybody who could produce a pre-mass ceremony for Pope John Paul at the LA Coliseum? And Tom goes, yeah, I can do that. Well,
oh my goodness, I love
it. So he got the Master Chorale in California, and he got Sandy Patty, and he got all these kids and choreographers, and then there were 100,000 people, and the Pope in his little Pope mobile coming around, and somehow he pulled it off with a headphone, and
he said yes, and then figured it out along the way.
And then went, oh, okay, it was complete, but he did it, and it went well. And then we start, the same thing when we did. I performed in Las Vegas. He helped with the production of that. We started. He was still working as an actor and a producer, and he worked with a guy named Tim Bagley, who's now doing a lot of film and TV. And Tim was his secretary, his assistant, and they had one phone. And Tim would answer the phone and go, McCoy Rigby Entertainment. Hold on 1 second. He's go, Tom, it's for you. He goes,
But as if he was like across the hall or
yeah.
maybe in a different
Actually,
office building.
get the phone. He said, Tim, get the phone. Tim goes, no, you get the phone. He goes, no, you get the phone. And finally somebody got McCoy Rigby Entertainment. And Tom said, okay, tell him just a minute and hold. Can you hold a minute? And then he just hands the telephone with the wire on it over to Tom. Anyway, to make a long story short, Tom started getting into ideas of I got a barn, let's create a show. We produced the Peter Pan, begged, borrowed, had investors come into it. We only had 3 months of a tour booked, 3 months. That's not going to pay for the cost at all. And we went to, our very first stop was Boston. And Boston had a reviewer that was, he said in a pre-interview, what next? Mark Spitz, in I don't know, in whatever show Carousel.
Yeah, right.
It was like so mean and it was so bad. And I remember crying before I went, oh my God, why does he hate me? But then the next day when we opened, this guy gave us a great review, and that ended up to be a 2-year tour. But once again, we went, oh, I hope this works. It's much more sophisticated these days. There's so many variables. It's much more expensive, but ignorance was bliss, I think, again. And
yeah, but you know what, Kathy? Yes, it is more expensive and I guess more intricate in some ways, but at the same time, there are very few what I like to call creative producers out there who live in that sense of wonder with still knowing what, capitalization has to be and fees and insurances and who gets what paid when, blah, blah, blah. But Kathy, you and your husband's sense of optimism plus savvy has proven, has been a proven thing.
At our theater, it isn't for kids, it's an equity theater of 1,200 seat equity theater. It is as lovely as most any Broadway house as far as I'd have to say the talent that we've been so gratefully blessed to have on stage has given us about 26 seasons or 27 seasons of really good talent, really good directors, and obviously grow along the way in the theater. The La Mirada Theater is owned by the city, and we are given a budget that is not huge, but you get the right talented people and creators together, and you build this, this trust and care. And the great thing about Tommy was an actor. He really doesn't. I have to say this. He doesn't make money with it. He does everything he can to put it back into so that the city and these actors get what they need to make a great show. And then when we do tours, that's when we get to earn a little of money with it. But I have to say that there's no stone unturned. There's no director that he's worked with that he doesn't go, I can do that within reason. And he has produced 26 seasons that I can't say I put all the pieces together. I get to be on the artistic side of things, but he cares so much, and he will tell you that once you're in this McCoy Rigby Entertainment family, you're in it for life. If you try to get away from us, we will hunt you down. And it's a joke, but yeah, he really cares deeply about these actors, and many have come back, and I think that's part of the success is that you care about your employees, you care about your staff, you treat them right. You make sure they are all inclusive and nobody feels alienated, and that they're taken care of from the time they walk in and do an audition to the time they leave. And so I think that's been a lot of the success. If you cast correctly, if you have the right directors who care to, you're gonna have a good show. Even if you don't like the show, or how you're gonna have a good production.
Absolutely. Well, Kathy, I think about, obviously you talked a little bit about your family and some of the dis-ease within it, but then the family that you got to build and the tribe you built with your gymnastics, the tribe you built within, your theatrical community in the Broadway world, within being Peter Pan, part of the Lost Boys. I think of the tribe that you've built with McCoy Rigby, this tribe of artisans and craftsmen, to not only giving them a platform to be their best selves, but also to then, hopefully go out there and give back. And I can't think of two people that have done more in terms of that, because on top of the McCoy Rigby Entertainment Series as at La Mirada, you then went and created the Conservatory of the Arts. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about that and that journey.
Okay, but and I also want to say that about the theater and stuff, we need each other. We can't have any divas.
Oh,
We can't have that, because you know what? When we're on stage together and sound is doing their best to make it happen, or lighting, or moving props, or I remember, let me just tell you one story. I remember one time when
no, I love it. I want to hear all the stories, Kathy.
no, I was doing Peter Pan, and I had done it quite a bit, but for some reason, when I got to this little part in Neverland, the song Neverland, I remembered starting to freak myself out and have a panic attack a little bit right where in Neverland. Not hard. It was just that phrase. And I remember thinking, oh my God, Wendy, please help me in this moment. I need to focus on you because I'm afraid in this moment. And it lasted for a long time. And so I needed her, and she needed, and I see that with different people in different parts, and you want to squeeze their hand and say it's going to be okay. The same in gymnastics. Please God, team, I'm terrified up here. Please give me your good vibes that I will stay on this apparatus, or and the audience plays a part. So nobody can get too high and mighty, because anything can happen at any time, and we need each other. Maybe it's my insecurity, but I don't want to, I don't want all the pressure. I've had that. I don't want it. I want
Isn't that
everybody.
the beauty of what we do as theater, as theater makers, theater creators, theater people? I mean, it's a built-in community, but obviously too, what you get to do through the showing is, let these kids know, but again, kids of all ages, the power of the community of it.
Yeah. Because we get so competitive, and rightfully so, because it's a tough business, and it's easy to go, wait a minute, I was that good, but you don't know everything that goes on that makes people cast, or people. And the same with the kids, they tend to, especially if you go to dance competitions, for example, parents who want so desperately for their kids to be good at what they do, because you feel good when you're good. It makes you feel great. You don't want to be the one that gets a bad score, doesn't perform well. So parents get very emotional about their kids struggling and failing, but you have to let that happen to allow, rather than blame somebody else, to allow them to grow. If you're just great all the time, that doesn't happen. And so we've tried to create a thing about failing is okay. You're going to grow, you're going to learn, you're going to get better, you're going to work harder. But we're not judging you. You're not being thrown out because you're not perfect. We strive for excellence, but we don't strive for perfection. That's
Kathy,
not what we do.
I need to get recordings of you when I'm feeling down, and just have them in my iPhone, so that you have such, I'm like over here trying to hold back tears, but again, I'm speaking with someone I've looked up to my whole life, so I'm trying to be a professional. You have such a beautiful way with words, and also just your being. You're a light.
Well, you know what? We can all be lights, and I'll tell you where the biggest aha moment came. And it was at our conservatory. We do a thing called No Limits. And it happened because one of our teachers had a child that was mentally and physically challenged. He wasn't autistic, he wasn't Down syndrome, but he fell into some other spectrum. And her name is Carla, and Carla said, hey, he needs some physical fitness. What can we do to just help him? Not to become a gymnast, not to become any big fat dancer or a big, just she wanted him to get some exercise and to be able to feel good about himself and just get some strength. And so I invited my grandson, my nephew, and so I had three little boys. One was shy, one had emotional challenge. The other one was so hyper that I had to pull him off apparatus because he was like going to kill himself. And these three little boys, and anyway, we got to recital, and I had to put a routine together. And oh my God, they blew the house down because the little boy with the mental challenges just started going ta-da and somersaulting and trying to cartwheel, and the other, my grandson who was more shy was up there and he was doing his best to keep Calvin in line. And then there was my nephew Jackson, who was he was the star. they were great, and they all have gone on to different things, and our No Limits program started from that. And we now have these kids whose parents, when they first watched them, they would come and they look through the glass window where their kids were, and many of them were rocking. They're rocking back and forth. One of the little boys would turn and face the back and wouldn't face the mirror, and he would just stand there. And in about 2 weeks, you saw these high school kids that were helping, and these kids that were grooving with the music. That little boy turned himself around and just on his own started moving, started dancing. And now these kids perform at galas, they perform on stage for recital, and they are so proud that, and the parents, when they first watch their child turn around and face the others and actually sort of connect with each other and hold hands, they started crying because their expectations were just that their kid would have something normal in their life, that they could do something that they felt proud of. And at our last little gala, there's a young girl named Amina, and Amina, who I'm not sure what it is that she had, but she's hard to understand. But in this night, as she has come with No Limits, she looked at this gala and said, "Hey, everybody, listen to me." After she sang, "I love what I do. I love No Limits. I love my mom and dad because they brought me here." This little girl's talking in front of all these sophisticated grown-up people with absolutely no fear, and singing in front of them with just such delight in her voice. And you have to go, she's a star. It may not look like your star, but she's a star. And she took stage and she performed, and people melted. And that's what we try to do with, and we try to do that with all our kids. That, Susie Q over here, maybe she's a little overweight, maybe she doesn't have those quick twitch muscles, maybe she can't hear a note, but she can get better. And when they feel that and they see that and they go, "Did you see what I just did? I did a bent leg cartwheel and I kept my arm straight."
And the fact
They're
that
thrilled.
you focus for them on and reminding them what they can do, and to realize that being a first-rate version of yourself is going to make you the star of your life, whether it's on the stage or off. Those kids, I keep going back to me, Kathy. I'll never forget the 2 hour and 20 minutes at the L'Enfantin, seeing you sing, dance, fly. But for me, it was a ministry. It was a ministry, downstage center, of reminding every kid in that audience of all ages that they are enough and that it is never too late to do a thing. And the fact that you get to continue as Cathy Rigby, as yourself, with your husband, but the fact that you are letting people, I have this quote, I wake up to it every day, it's on my vision board. And you mentioned something previously that reminded me of it, Maya Angelou's, people aren't going to remember what you did. They're going to remember how you made them feel. Cathy, those kids, they get to wake up now every day saying, wow, I can turn toward people. I can turn toward an audience, and with my shoulders back, take center stage in my life. I mean, Cathy, that's incredible.
It's a gift. It's a gift to those who get to do it. And yeah, and on the other side too, you can also hold them accountable.
That's right.
Say, you know what? You want to do this, this musical. You want to be out front and center, yet you don't know your lines.
That's right.
Haven't practiced. What an insult that is to somebody else who has worked their rear ends off to get there. No, you don't get to do that. If you want to be great at what you do, you have to work at it. That doesn't mean you have to be abused. That doesn't mean that you have to be judged by everybody, but you have to work as hard as you can.
That's right.
You have to just work as hard as you can and get better at the things that, and if that isn't necessarily your calling, then you're going to use, it's never wasted training. It's never, ever. it's all put to good use. And
Well, and I mean, look at, I think of myself, right? All those years as a performer that I now get to use as a director. I'm so grateful I did what I
yeah,
did. And I'm sure you continue to look at your tool belt and your arsenal, continuing to take things out, you know, of the tool belt,
yeah.
based upon everything you've been through.
Yeah, you do that. And then when you get to a certain age, and as much as I'd like to think I'm still the age of Peter Pan, unfortunately, this boy had to grow up. Um, you know, you do feel things. You can't do some of the things as much as you will yourself to do it. Sometimes it doesn't happen. So you figure out an alternate route. You go around the wall or you go over the wall in some different manner to keep growing or doing something different. Or, it's like you were an actor, you're a director, and now you're somebody who interviews people, and you wouldn't have the skills you have now if you didn't learn in acting how to listen and how to allow yourself to emotionally connect to somebody else, because then you can ask the right question. Because I can't tell you how many times you'll do an interview and the person that you're being interviewed by is thinking about the questions they have to do, and they're missing the points, and they're missing, yes, you have to be knowledgeable, but then you have to engage with each other. And
Yeah.
it's the same with acting, you know.
You know, it's interesting too, Kathy. My husband, before I started doing these interviews for FENIX, you know, I had some noise about the fact that, you know, I'd never really done anything of this nature, but he goes, Will, think of it as if someone's eavesdropping in on you in a rehearsal room with you and an actor, because I've witnessed that. And your ability to empathize, sympathize, but also relate, because you've again been in the trenches as a performer, but also just look at it as, you know, an extension of your bliss. And it was such a beautiful thing, and something that you continue to touch on, that it makes me think and reminds me, in a world where kids are wanting to at times become famous quick without doing the craft, and also a world that likes to pigeonhole people, like that reviewer in Boston who thought
Yeah.
you was just going to be a stunt casting. Ooh,
Yeah.
Cathy Rigby, acrobat on the balance beam, flying. Like, it's again, like you said to the kids, and what I like to say to actors, of whether they have Tony Awards or not, I love saying the work and questions never stop. Being a student should never stop. And the minute that it does, I think you should rethink doing this thing, because it's an insult to the other people behind you that want to do the thing, but also to the audience that's paying good buck to be
Keep being
entertained.
curious. Be curious, be interested in, I mean, people, you have so much to offer. I've learned so much in this short period of time about you. And well, it makes you, then you ask the next question, and that you don't have to know anything about somebody,
Right.
or know anything about, whether it's in the business world or it's out of the business. You just have to get interested and think, wow, what does that mean? And don't be afraid to ask the questions. Don't be afraid to look stupid. It's okay. Just ask a question because you're interested. If you start thinking about, how am I going to ask this? What am I going to, will I stop? Just be interested and ask a question.
Well, you know, Kathy, I could have talked to you forever, and there were obviously so many things that I wanted to ask that maybe I kind of asked in my own way, but I'm so happy to have had the time to speak with you, because, you know, whether it's kids who are being introduced to right now as their parents play them, you know, Peter Pan, or, you know, people can look up on YouTube of you doing TV commercials or television shows, or you at the Olympics. I think that at the end of the day, even though I'm 37, I'd say I'm 37 going on 90. During these past 16 months, I've been thinking a lot about legacy. And I think about too, what I'm gonna leave behind in terms of how I made people feel. And I still go back to that little kid who saw you, Kathy. And
yeah. And can I just say something about you? I don't think, Will, that you are 90. I see somebody who has a childlike fascination with life. I've seen your other interviews that you've done, or some of them, and you are people that I've been interviewed by. I have to say that your passion and your interest is very much like a kid going, "Hey, that's really great. Can I do that? Can I fly like that? Can I do this? What's that?" There's that kind of quality you have that's very youthful, and please don't lose that. You know, I you remind me of this little kid that came up to me one time and he said, "Hey, are you Peter Pan?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "Well, I really like how you fly, and I love the fairy dust. I love everything." And then he looks really close and he goes, But as I get up close, I see you have wrinkles. But it was so friggin' great. And so
Kathy, I
honest.
wish my husband was here because literally, I forget my husband. I have, since I was a kid, God bless, my brother Anthony was always the more quiet one. Every 5 seconds was a new question, but I never had a question mark. There was always an ellipsis.
Yes.
My mom says I'd like to do the 5-in-1 question, and I guess I still do it, but thanks for picking up on that.
But you couldn't fake that. You can't fake that. You can be a really slick reporter or interviewer, but you can't fake the real genuine interest in people and in life and in theater. And that's what makes you a good actor, is that you're really listening. What are they going to do next? You know, that makes you a better singer because you're not thinking about how you sound. You're thinking about, you know, this is really an adventure. And when those moments happen within a scene, for example, that's so pure, and you're not thinking about how did I do that, it's brilliant, you know, brilliant.
Well,
but thank you for this.
Kathy, I'm so grateful for the time I had today. I am so grateful to now know you. I selfishly can't wait as a director to work somehow, somewhere with you in La Mirada. This is a dream come true for me. I have to be, and I'll leave this in. I was probably more nervous for this interview than the others. So like, I don't know, of course, look back and be like, Will, why were you so thinking about the next? Probably because I was just trying to be, but you know, near the end, I feel like I finally got my groove by the end.
Oh, you from the beginning. I couldn't tell at all. So no, I didn't sense that at all. I didn't sense that with any of your interviews. Ever that you have this boyish enthusiasm that's lovely. I don't know why you'd want to change it.
Thanks, Kathy. Well,
thank you.
I'm so grateful to know you now, and I can't wait for the next time.
Age, artists and bands struggle to make a living. In fact, only a small number of artists can live off their craft. For the 98% of artists that don't have the luxury of being signed to a label, it's tough. But artists deserve to live off their art. Wherever you are around the world, appreciation of music does not change. FENIX brings bands and their fans together, whilst allowing bands to properly monetize their passion. The FENIX app will directly connect bands and fans with no need for middlemen. We're utilizing the blockchain to give the power back to the artist once and for all. Join FENIX, join the change.